Hey everybody, we're just going to start in a few minutes.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, this is Paul. We're going to start in a few minutes. A few more people are joining us. We'll be right with you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Barlow. I'm a divisional director of sales and marketing for Senior Lifestyle on the West Coast. And with me, I'm joined with Kylene Garcia. She's a licensed vocational nurse for Right at Home in Cypress, and they service Los Angeles and Orange counties. She's going to be talking to us today about managing stress while caring for a loved one. Everybody's going to be muted during this, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll try to get it to as many as possible at the end of the webinar. Hope you all get a lot out of this and find it informative. So, Kylene, whenever you're ready.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that, Paul. So just like he mentioned, today we're going to be talking about managing stress while caring for a loved one. It's something that we typically see every day when we are working with adult children who are now caring for their aging parent. So I'm glad to be here with you today. And usually our presentations are face-to-face. And so this is one of our first times that we're actually doing this webinar online. So we did include a couple of polls that you'll see so we can make it semi-interactive. So I do invite you to go ahead and fill out the polls as we're going along and through this. There should be about 3 of them. All right, so let's just jump right in. Sorry, so basically our first thing we want to look at is what does stress look like? And it can come in many different forms. Over the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about the ones that we see more often than not. The reason for the colors in this slide is particularly because there are several things that do go hand in hand. The first one being those in blue, we look at the lack of energy or this overwhelming fatigue that we get sometimes. Which also goes hand in hand with sleep problems. So sometimes we might notice that someone is sleeping too much or too little, and basically it goes to either side of the spectrum. One is not better than the other. We both definitely want to address if you're sleeping too much or sleeping too little, but we can see how those two tie into each other. In terms of the lack of energy, even for those who are sleeping too much, it's a chronic fatigue that can be developed when you have this lack of energy that we see. In addition to that, in the magenta color, we've got changes in eating habits, which of course, as we change things, that's either going to determine whether we're seeing weight loss or weight gain, depending on what and when we're eating. In addition to that, we've got these feelings of hopelessness, and a lot of times we will slowly withdraw from things that we used to love to do. And a lot of times we withdraw from things due to time constraints or just some restrictions we have, not necessarily because we don't want to do it, but because we decide one thing is more important than the other versus trying to find a balance between all of the items. And it can come in multiple forms, such as neglecting our own physical and emotional type needs. And sometimes these can be simple things like missing dental appointments that we normally make, missing our own doctor's appointments, going a few days without picking up our own prescriptions from the pharmacy. These are some things that we tend to see when it comes to stress related items. My apologies, it looks like my microphone is going in and out. But the next one is basically becoming impatient, irritable, or argumentative. And this can be something as simple as someone was trying to communicate with you, such as maybe your spouse or your partner asking a question like, did you take the trash? Did you have a chance to take the trash out today? And it becomes an argument versus no, I didn't have a chance to go ahead and take out the trash today. We create this anxiety about the future, and anxiety is more often than not, the anxiety is always about the future and that fear of the unknown. We can develop a depression or sadness, depression being the clinical term, and sadness basically after about 8 to 9 days of this chronic sadness, it's usually that's when we start calling it depression. So between depression and sadness are things that we start to see difficulty coping with everyday issues. For those of you that live in Southern California, you probably know how bad freeways of traffic are, and so it's something that we've learned to deal with over time. However, sometimes little things like traffic and getting to work late just create a huger issue than it needs to be. And so we're seeing that dealing with everyday issues can be a sign of stress. And we've got some physical items, things like headaches, stomach aches, other physical items that tend to take place. And with the headaches and stomach aches, we tend to see this increase with age. So whereas someone who's in their 20s may start getting a headache, they may not develop the things like the stomach ache, the acid reflux, things like diarrhea that can kind of come along with it. Lots of publications in regards to like that mind-gut connection. And then lastly, we're lowering our resistance to illness. So we're basically weakening our immune system. So getting rid of stress is something that we definitely want, or limiting stress is something that we definitely want to work on. And so I'm glad that you're here for this presentation. So we're going to do a quick poll just so I can get a better read of the room in terms of how do you display stress and kind of addressing some of these items. So I'm going to
All right, so Kylene, it looks like everybody, the majority of the group is having a change in sleep patterns, and then the change in eating is tied with that.
Good to know. Those are probably the two most common that we tend to see. Is the sleep and eating. They're probably the easiest, the easiest two things that we also notice because it affects us immediately. We can see the weight gain or weight loss if we stop eating. And in terms of tiredness, we feel it every day when we are tired and we have that chronic fatigue. So we're going to go over just a couple of ways in terms of those two items, some ways to go ahead and combat them. the first one we see based off of our poll results is the change in sleeping patterns. So I have here 6 items that are listed in for appropriate sleep health that we do want to go over. And the number one that we have up here is stopping blue light exposure 2 hours prior to your bedtime. Now, blue light exposure is something that's probably been more and more prominent in the news, and we see it more frequently now because it's something that's incorporated in our modern technology. This blue light is installed inside of our phones, tablets, computers, TVs. Basically what this blue light does is it kind of tricks our body into thinking that it's still daytime, we're not ready for bed. Our bodies naturally produce a hormone called melatonin. Now, melatonin is essential for us to be able to fall asleep. I'm sure many of you have seen it over the counter or someone has recommended it to you, but we actually go ahead and make that ourselves. It's not something that we need to have in terms of a supplement because our body will naturally do it. So by stopping the exposure at least 2 hours before bedtime, it doesn't stop our production of melatonin. In addition to that, our country is, you know, we run on caffeine, not just coffee, but that probably being one of the most prominent. You can't go a block without seeing a Starbucks or a Coffee Bean, things of that nature. So we want to stop the consumption of caffeine between 6 to 8 hours prior to bedtime. The reason being is because that caffeine level is elevated inside of our blood for 6 to 8 hours after still consuming it. So although you might not feel like you're at the peak of your performance, it's still definitely in our blood and still acting as an agent to keep us awake. Some tips for that sometimes people forget is that caffeine is not only in coffee, we also have it in things like our sodas and even teas. A lot of times we think of tea as something that is going to assist us or aid us into falling asleep, which there definitely are teas like a sleepy time tea. However, you just want to check the back of the nutrition label to make sure that there's no caffeine. In regards to sodas, that I know some people say, I only have soda at dinner time. We're getting a little close to the cutoff time of when we're trying to fall asleep. So we just want to see if we can opt out. I know some of the lighter sodas tend to be caffeine free, things like Sprite, but they also have some of the darker sodas which are typically have caffeine that are caffeine free options. So you might want to go ahead and look for those at your next grocery shopping trip. In addition to that, we want to get on a sleep schedule and stick to it. This is including days off. I can't stress how important it is to keep that schedule. It's very common for a lot of us who work Monday through Friday to be able to say, okay, I can stay up late, I can sleep until noon tomorrow. I've had a rough week, I definitely deserve this. And it seems like as though we're trying to always catch up on sleep. But what we want to do is create a sleep schedule. So if you're someone like myself, you might be up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And what we want to do is scale that back to an appropriate time for us to sleep so that we're not constantly waking up tired. And when we get to the sleep schedule, we basically need to look at this as multiple parts to it. So if you're currently going to sleep at 1 o'clock and your goal is to go to sleep by 11 o'clock, we don't want to just jump in one day and say, okay, tonight I'm going to sleep at 11 o'clock. Our body doesn't really work that way. So when we're shifting time periods, we want to shift it in 15 to 30 minute increments going backwards. So my current time for bed is 11 o'clock. So tonight I'm going to go to sleep at 11:30. The day before that, we're gonna go ahead and go back to 10:30, 10:15, 10 o'clock until we hit that designated time, because we can't just jump super quick. And like all habits, they do take time to form. So if it's not happening in the first 3 days, just give it some time. Typically habits take about 3 weeks, 21 days to form. And so that's why it's important to go ahead and make sure that we're keeping the consistent sleep schedule even on our days off. The next one is go ahead and talk with your doctor. If the other items are not working, talk with your doctor about melatonin supplements. I understand that they are over the counter and you can try them by yourself if you need to, but there are some underlying conditions that may actually be affecting this sleep. And so you want to get that treated first. People who have a history of thyroid in their hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. That is all tied into hormones. Melatonin is a hormone that's created by your pineal gland. And so basically we want to talk with their doctor first, give them the opportunity to at least check what your thyroid is, to make sure that we're ruling out our other options before we start taking something on our own. In addition to that, we want to get our bodies moving, get some exercise in. However, we don't want to do this right before bed because then we kind of get this like hyped up sensation. We've just worked out, where we're not super tired yet. So try to limit that. Don't get within 2 hours of your bedtime schedule. And then lastly, showering before bed. Many of you who have had children have probably found that it's a good routine to get your children ready for bed by bathing them and going to sleep. So it's more than just the association of a child thinking, okay, I'm taking a bath, so now I'm going to bed. It physiologically changes your temperature. So what happens when we bathe, it actually raises our body temperature, but there's a cool down period where our body temperature does dip, and it creates a sense of relaxation and tiredness that will kind of go ahead and help ease us to sleep. So when bathing and showering, if possible, try to do it before bed and try to make that your last task, so that you're not doing the dishes afterward, taking out the trash, playing with the kids. Just, you want to go ahead and make that your last item, so when you lay down, you're taking the full advantage of that dip in your body temperatures shift. The next one that everyone went ahead and listed was the changes in eating habits. So now the changes in eating habits, these ones are pretty simple rules to follow. We want to ensure that we are scheduling times to eat. So it's not just like, I'll eat when I have a moment, but we like mindfully and appropriately set up an eating schedule, whether that is 9, 1, and 5. And we also want to include things like snacks throughout the day so that we're not super hungry. But we also don't want to overdo it on snacks or the portion sizes of snacks, because we're trying to stick in this regular rhythm of when to eat, and we're trying not to shift things over. So as we see a lot of stress, things are going to come down to rhythm and planning and keeping things the same and consistent. We also want to still allow for foods you love. So definitely a lot of people with the whole staying at home and the COVID outbreak, a lot of people are basically, the whole joke is that everyone's just eating at any time of the day. And what we want to do is make sure that we're scheduling it, but still allowing ourselves to have what we love in moderation. We want to make sure we're not skipping meals, because if we skip meals, it might have us eat a larger meal and then not be hungry for the next meal. So again, staying in that regular rhythm. We want a meal plan, so we know exactly what we're expecting to eat, and it helps us kind of gauge how much we should be eating. And then we want to have those better choice foods available. And so like I was saying, don't cut out completely all foods that you love to have, but we do want to still have those better choice foods like vegetables and fruits and nuts available to us, because if we don't have them in our house, more than likely it's a lot easier for us to say, let's just order pizza, than to have to go through the whole ordeal of going to the store, buying all the products, and still making a meal. So we want a meal plan and ensure that we have this available to us already. And so we're going to go ahead and we'll go through. These are the two that we didn't really select. So we went through the first two. And so the next thing we want to talk about is lightening that load when we're caring for a loved one. And one of the common things that we tend to see working in in-home care is that sometimes there are multiple sons and daughters that have a family member that needs to have care. And a lot of times there's always that one son or daughter that steps up and takes on the majority of the load. That is the person that's scheduling all the doctor's appointments, going to all the doctor's appointments, seeking help from outside industries such as assisted living, boarding cares, in-home cares. So there's that one person that basically takes on the entire mountain and decides, I'm going to do this by myself. Or they just assume that their siblings or their village people like aunts, uncles, cousins aren't able to assist with. So they take on the entire load and tend to stress themselves out before even asking for help. So some of the things we want to do is, one, we want to ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes, whether it be pride or you just don't know where to start, ask for help and start with those people that you're immediately comfortable with, whether that's a spouse, a best friend, a adult child, another relative that you trust. You want to understand that you definitely deserve a break, especially being the person that is caring for your loved one. You want to know that you still deserve a break. And a lot of times we put this stress on ourselves. Basically, if no one ensures that my mom is getting to her doctor's appointment, she's going to go without. And we create these scenarios in our head about all the bad things that are going to happen if I'm not the one to do this. So understanding that you deserve a break and that your needs are just as important as anyone else's, and understanding that, yes, my mom needs help, or yes, my dad needs help with these appointments or grocery shopping or items of that nature, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be yourself. We want to make sure that we set dedicated time to ourselves. At least 30 minutes a day should be your time that is undisrupted and just for you and your thoughts. And we want to delegate. This is one of the hardest things that we see for people to do, delegating. And the easiest way to delegate is to make a list of what your usual routine is and start carving out things that could be done by someone else. We are going to talk about delegation a little bit more in this presentation, but for right now, we're going to just kind of keep that in the back of our mind. And in addition to that, when the stress gets too hard, we definitely want to go ahead and seek out those support groups. One thing that we have learned during this pandemic is that almost everything can be done online. So whether it's online or in person, that's one other thing, just to get support. Sometimes the strongest thing that we have that can kind of keep us going is knowing that there are others out there like us going through the same thing. And so that's why I'm encouraging definitely taking a part of support groups. I know our particular agency, Vernon Atwood, who's the owner here, helps facilitate a support group for people who have dementia, but there are so many other ones that are out there, from like motor vehicle accidents, things such as loss of movement, Parkinson's. That if there's a diagnosis for it, there's most likely a support group for it. Okay, like I said, this was coming up. So how to delegate. So how to delegate is important. And once you get the hang of delegating, you start to feel a little bit better about it. So knowing your team. So I always like to think of this as kind of like a network of people. So in your network, it should be you, if you have a spouse or adult children, close family members, those are going to be your closest people. And then you can start branching out. Who else is involved in care? Sometimes that might be a neighbor who, when I do my grocery shopping, I also grocery shop for my neighbor. Or that can be a cousin that lives nearby and stops in just to check on mom and dad every here and there. So just kind of figure out who that team is, who could you rely on, who's that person that always says before leaving your house, is there anything I can help you with? Know those people. Ask for assistance from different people. This is a huge thing. So a lot of times our spouses or our siblings, rather than just asking one person, we want to break it up. Maybe I ask the neighbor, do you mind stopping and checking in on my mom on Mondays and Wednesdays? And then you ask your brother, on Tuesdays and Fridays, can you check in with mom? Then you ask another relative, when you go grocery shopping, do you mind picking up some items for mom? The bigger the team, the less likely you are to delegate all your tasks to one person, where we're now overwhelming them. So we just want to think about our bigger picture. How many people can I get assistance from, and how do I break this up? The next thing, for people who think I'm the only one that can do this, and I know how this feels because I am that person that thinks like, I want it done right, I will do it myself, but then we overwhelm ourselves. We want to make sure that we have our tasks documented, and it might be something as simple as, How do I wash laundry for my mom? My mom likes things done a specific way. So basically including people and what your thought processes are and how you like things to be completed. The next one, allow for mistakes. As much as we document and communicate for people to assist us, we want to go ahead and allow room for mistakes. So maybe this is the first time you're letting your brother take your mom to the doctor's office. Make sure he has documented. Take mom's purse with her, bring her insurance card and ID, stop at the pharmacy on your way out. Have these things documented so that they can mimic what your normal routine is. And lastly, don't forget to say thank you to your support team. They're more likely, if they feel appreciated, to continue to assist you in the loved one that you're trying to care for. Okay, so now we're on to dedicating that actual 30 minutes of our time. So there are a few ways that we can dedicate time to ourselves. And these are just a few examples. We can, in 30 minutes, read a chapter of a book. We can watch one of our favorite TV shows or sitcoms. We can do some type of physical activity like riding a bike, going for a walk, or just coming up with the exercise regimen. And lastly, we can spend 30 minutes writing about our goals or about our day or trying to set some goals. So we are going to be dropping another poll in here just to kind of see where everyone's at, and then we can talk about a few other items. And so Paul will go ahead and be dropping that in shortly.
All right, Kylie, so it looks like everybody's voted and we have a three-way tie with exercise, mental stimulation, and prayer.
Got it. Okay. So no worries. We can fit these all in. So we'll just kind of go through them. Okay, so just dedicating time to physical activity, whatever that may be for you. A couple of things we can do. Before, we always want to, for anything when it comes to relieving stress, becoming a planner and mastering that is going to be your best friend. We want to be able to find a destination, and so what we need to do is pre-plan. So for a walking or a bike ride, if we're only allowing ourselves 30 minutes because that's all we have, if you have more, great, but a lot of times we don't. So we're looking at a 30-minute increment. We want to go ahead and make sure that we already pre-find that destination to walk or ride a bike. So make sure that you measure out, if I'm starting at my house, I can walk to this destination in 15 minutes and walk back to allow yourself enough time to get back. So if we don't plan ahead of time, then we might go over our time and cause more stress on ourselves. So we just want to plan in ahead our destination. If possible, find a friend to join. It's always nice to be able to go ahead and kill two birds with one stone. We're going to find a friend, and if they can join us, they can come for a walk or a bike ride. We can also talk with them and just vent. That's also another way that we can combine physical activity as well as seeing a loved one. Again, back to the whole planning part, we want to make sure that we don't spend 20 minutes standing outside of our house in our workout clothes looking for a great playlist, podcast, or audiobook. Try to get that set up beforehand and know what you're going to be looking at. And know what you're going to be looking at. And then lastly, for a workout routine, have that set up already. There are tons of websites or YouTube that you can look up a 30-minute workout. You can do it in your house, or you can do it in your house or separately. And just going back to the asking a friend to join you, if this person right now with the whole stay-at-home order, if this person does not live with you, for right now, we're not gonna be walking with a friend, but after this is over and it's okay again, then walking with a friend is definitely okay. But for the time being, try to stay with those who live in your household, or go ahead and go solo. The next one is some form of mental stimulation. This can be in multiple forms, but it can be reading, puzzles, podcasts, or getting crafty. And again, we're talking about the whole planning part of it. In terms of getting something crafty done, we want to make sure we have all of our materials already pre-ordered. We have them in one place where we can go ahead and access them easier. We want to have a designated place to do this, whether I'm reading, I'm crafting, or I'm doing a puzzle. We want to have a designated place for this, and we want to set a goal. So basically, if we're doing something crafty, we know it's going to take much more than 30 minutes. So set a goal. Maybe I'm going to paint the background of the canvas, or maybe I'm just going to cut all of my materials and get them ready for the next day when I have another 30 minutes. So one good option in terms of like crafty, if you're stuck at home and you have access to a sewing machine, it would be going ahead and making face masks. Those are very popular right now. A lot of people are killing a lot of time by making face masks. Having that designated place. This one is particularly for the podcast and the reading. Sometimes we break our focus or concentration. If I'm trying to watch younger children and read a book, my mind's not really going to be on that book, and I really just sat there for 30 minutes rereading the same paragraph that I've already read. So we want to have a place designated for this. That's away from others. If you're crafting with family members, that's fine. But in terms of trying to do something solo, like reading or a puzzle, you definitely want to give yourself some space where you can actually concentrate. And then setting a goal is going back to the whole, I'm going to read at least one chapter, I'm going to listen to at least one podcast, or I'm just going to cut out all of what I need, my cutouts for today. And remember, we want to take this 30 minutes every day. So a project will be stretched out. You're not going to sit there for 4 hours, but by the end of the week, you might have accomplished something good, like read half of a book, or finished a project such as creating masks. Next one, dedicating time to provide some sort of relief. Big ones are definitely prayer, meditation, and practicing mindfulness. In terms of that, we definitely want to be transparent about this. If I go and I lock myself in a room, someone might assume that I'm just angry. But if I tell my spouse or my children or my parents and let them know, hey, I'm going to take 30 minutes just to go pray. So unless it's an emergency, I will see you in 30 minutes. Being transparent about that. The next one, and I feel like technology has come up a lot in this so far, leave your phone in another room. It's so hard to kind of bring ourselves back to that place of relief through meditation and prayer and mindfulness. So that we want to leave our phone in the other room so the distractions are away. We don't need any more emails pinging, any more text messages. Get comfortable. That's definitely a big one. Whether you're praying, meditating, or practicing mindfulness, you want to get comfortable and work on being in the moment. For those of you who haven't heard of mindfulness before, it basically is a state of being in tune with yourself and what's happening, and it's kind of to help clear your head. So when we're going ahead and we're clearing our head, understand that your mind is still going to wander. Our minds do it all the time. The point of mindfulness is bringing it back to ourselves. And the way that a lot of people practice mindfulness is focusing on their breathing. So it can just be a few deep breaths and just sit there and be in the moment and be able to feel exactly what you're doing. Meditation is very similar. Some are guided, some are not. So whatever form of meditation works for you. And prayer is a huge one that we see in a lot of our clients. Sometimes praying helps relieve that stress. And it doesn't necessarily just need to be prayers that you've learned as a child. It can be just you having your personal relationship, talking with whatever your belief system is, and just having an open dialogue as if you were talking to a friend. And lastly, have everything that you need within reach. Bring a water bottle with you into your room or something, just so that you're not walking back and forth. It'll be very disruptive for you if you decide that you're thirsty 5 minutes into this and now you have to cross through the entire family in the living room to get a water bottle. So just have everything that you're going to need with you. And then we went over the other three, but we'll go ahead and just touch base on this one quickly. And this is basically dedicating time to see a loved one. These are going to be a little bit different because of the pandemic and trying to stay away from people. So, but if we were outside of this pandemic, we just want to go ahead and let people know in advance that you'll be stopping by or calling them, so that you don't waste your time driving to a house that someone is not there. If you are visiting and you agree to meet up, maybe it would be nice to prepare a dish in advance and you can actually have a meal and chat with this person. Or if you're also meeting up at a different location other than one another's house, you might want to go ahead and meet up at a familiar place. What we don't want to do is go to a place that we've never been to, like a shopping center, have struggled to find parking and find a location. So try to go to a familiar place that you both know where it's at and you can plan for these things. Again, planning is key. So for right now, with the outbreak, definitely we're only going to be spending time with those that we live with. We can set up a lot of online conferences, FaceTime, Zoom chats, Google Hangouts. I've utilized all three of those and it's been great. Again, it's not the same, but to be able to see grandchildren, your children, it's definitely a great way to deal with that for right now. And basically why we're here today, why this is important. We are definitely looking at just outside of the emotional stress that we feel, it's affecting us daily and over time. This is a long-term thing that can negatively affect us. So right now, or as we age, we might notice more gastrointestinal issues, again, stomach issues. So that's like acid reflux, that is a stomach ache, that's diarrhea. Those are all things that can come out from having too much stress. A weakened immune system, which right now we want the strongest immune system we can. So we're all gonna work really hard not to stress out so much. It also raises our blood pressure. Now, blood pressure is so frequently monitored across the nation and the rest of the world because it's a telltale sign. If we start seeing high blood pressure at a younger age, we know that there's going to be more complications as we age and get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Because an increased blood pressure over time can and will increase your risk of a heart attack. So that's one of the biggest things reasons and factors we want to limit our stress is to ultimately avoid any of these circumstances happening. And if you've already had a heart attack or something that's a cardiovascular or a heart issue, we definitely want to be extra careful because you're more susceptible within the first 5 years of having these type of symptoms. And so basically we want to set goals. Again, setting goals is going to help because we are practicing and we're planning ahead of time. So we want to figure out some small ways we can manage stress. We want to think about things that make us happy. We want to include activities that we just haven't been able to do because of time constraints. And we want to identify our support group. These are all small things that we need in order to set valid goals that we can actually obtain. So small ways we can manage stress, learning to say no, buying an agenda and using it every day. I'm the #1 person who I will have an agenda and after about a week, I forget to start using it. So buying an agenda and following through it is the key. And lastly, prioritizing. So we're actually going to drop in a poll and have and see where people tend to be struggling in terms of these small 3 ways that we can manage stress. So I will go ahead and have Paul drop that in for me.
All right, Kai, so the hardest thing that we have trouble with is prioritizing, followed up by saying no to others.
All right, so we'll go ahead and just drop down here. So we're going to shift over to prioritizing. So basically, prioritizing is definitely something that we even need when we're building our agenda. But we're going to skip over that because if you can prioritize, then you can log it in your agenda. So we'll start here with prioritizing. And basically, on my left side, I've got some bullet points. So we want to make a list of all the items that we have to do. We want to figure out what has the soonest deadline, and when in doubt, we want to think Maslow. Now, Maslow was a psychologist that created Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And basically what we are focusing on is the bottom 3 parts of the pyramid, that love and belonging, safety, and physiological needs. There are 2 other tiers. We're not going to talk much about that today. We're just focusing on the bottom 3. So the bottom 3, you'll notice that it's a lot bigger in terms of wideness, because those bottom 3 items support the top of the pyramid, and that's why it's shaped like a pyramid, to know that you need to build the foundation of your physiological needs being met, then the safety, and then the love and belonging. So the top self-actualization cannot occur without the physiological needs being met, because you need that foundation. So when we're talking about physiological, we're talking about sleep, which we talked about earlier, food. Those things need to be met. So when we're prioritizing, if I have 2 things that need to get done, I can either go to the grocery store and get my meals for the week, or I can make sure that I stop and see my friend. We've got to take care of the groceries first, because that's what I need physiologically. I need to be able to consume food. I need to be able to sleep. Once we've maintained that and we've got that working, the next thing I'm worried about is safety. So those are things such as having resources, and the most common resource that we think of is going to be food and water, which again, physiological. But in order to secure those resources, we need to be employed, and have a roof over our head to care for ourselves and our families. Property is another part of safety. So now the next thing I need to think about is what's more important. Making sure that I show up for work the next day, because I need to have resources such as monetary items to be able to afford a house and a roof over my head. So we want to prioritize that again before we start looking into, I can call out of work and go hang out with a buddy of mine. So we're just learning to prioritize. So always start with what's going to affect our body immediately, what's going to affect our safety net, such as a place to live and resources that I have, and then what's going to affect my friends and family. And the reason why we're also still looking at the love and belongingness is because we do need relationships with friends and family, because ultimately they will benefit us, especially when I'm creating that network or that village of who's going to help me care for my mom and my dad. So those three are the three that we definitely want to focus on. So when we're prioritizing, we're always going to start from the bottom, and that's how we prioritize what's going to affect me right now, what will affect me tomorrow, and long term, what's going to affect me. Okay. The next part, saying no to others. I definitely struggled with this for a long time. It was always like, yes, I can do it. I'll get it done. So saying no, the first and foremost, when you say no to someone, you do not have to provide an explanation. You can if you'd like, but you do not need to provide an explanation. And this can be something like, maybe it's your sister's turn to take your mom to her doctor's appointment. If it's your sister's turn to take her mom to her doctor's appointment, she says, hey, you know what, can you take mom this week? It's okay for you to say, I can't. And if you want to explain, I can't because I have a deadline coming up. I don't have the time. You want to be direct with them. You don't have to dance around it and say, you know, I'm not sure, let me get back to you tomorrow, because now you've just created an additional 24 hours of worrying about the issue versus saying, I'm sorry, I can't assist you this time. And lastly, if you don't want to completely close those lines of communications or feel as though you're not willing to help, you can also let them know that, I'm interested in assisting you. However, I can't do it right now. Basically leaving those gates open for them to come and tell you, hey, can you help me next month then? And that's completely appropriately. So learning to say no is learning to set a boundary, and boundaries are not bad. It helps you deal with stress by being able to say no. And again, you don't have to explain yourself if you don't want to. Saying, I can't help you out this time is okay. Okay, and sorry, just a second. So saying no is okay. So these are just some tools, and I hope that these help you kind of navigate how to eliminate some stress, how to identify who your network is and who can help you. And in addition to that, being able to learn to prioritize and schedule your needs. I do want to again say thank you to Paul and the team for getting this ready. I have included the link to go ahead and set up a virtual tour if you are looking for some extra help caring for your mom or dad, or even if you don't live in the same state as them and you're looking for someone that's reliable to care for your loved one. You can definitely visit them at this website to find the nearest community near you. In addition to that, if you're not at that step yet, you can always give us a call for a free in-home care consultation. We're definitely flexible with the times. We're here to assist veterans and people who may not know what to do after discharging from a nursing facility or hospital. I have also plugged in our link so that you can find the location nearest you as well. But I do want to thank you so much for coming to our presentation today with this partnership, and we look forward to talking with you all soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kai. Does anybody have any questions for Kylene before we end? You can put them right in the chat and I can read them out, or there's even a little question box as well. All right, Kai, we did have one question. It came in if we could do a presentation on mindfulness later. So how about we talk about that, and we'll make sure we have everybody's contact information so we can send out that information as well. Thank you, Steph.
Sure, definitely.
Thank you, Vernon. All right, and then just like Kai said, if you are looking for a community for your loved one, please reach out to the community that you're working with now, or if you go to seeinglifestyle.com, you can just put in your zip code and somebody will be able to help you, and you can do the same with Right at Home. They're a tremendous partner for us, and they'll bring a caregiver right to your house, especially at this time. So if there's no other questions, I guess we will end. I hope everybody found this informative, and look forward to the future invites from us. Thanks, everybody.